Fascinating article out of the New York Times. It turns out when Marco Rubio was working with a gang of 8, that's 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats, who want to do immigration reform, they went over to Fox News to kiss Roger Ailes' ring. So understand how this worked back then. Republicans lose the 2012 election. They lost Latinos really badly, and that was a huge difference in very important swing states, and they believed they needed to court Latinos. That was a long time ago. It doesn't look like they're courting them anymore. But part of that failed attempt was Marco Rubio working with Democrats like Senator Schumer to pass this immigration reform. But in order for it to pass, they thought, we've got to go and beseech Fox News and others. So this is how politics actually works. New York Times explains, a few weeks after Senator Marco Rubio joined a bipartisan push for an immigration overhaul in 2013, he arrived alongside Senator Chuck Schumer at the executive dining room of News Corp's Manhattan headquarters for dinner. Their mission was to persuade Rupert Murdoch, the owner of the media empire, and Roger Ailes, the chairman and chief executive of its Fox News division, to keep the network's on-air personalities from savaging the legislation and give it a fighting chance at survival. My God, isn't this telling? First off, politicians, what do? They go, while no one's looking, and go to Fox News and go, please, please, please don't hit us. First of all, that's really sad and pathetic to begin with. Second of all, Fox News, which I thought they were fair and balanced. I thought they were Fox News, are like, oh, let's have a fancy dinner and decide what we're going to put on air while we're pretending to be news, based on our political agenda. Interesting. Mr. Murdoch, an advocate of immigration reform, and Mr. Ailes, his top lieutenant and the most powerful man in conservative television, agreed at the January 17, 2013 meeting to give the senators some breathing room. Now, I hear that what Roger Ailes and Murdoch think doesn't affect anchors at all. They're totally independent. Quote, the Fox anchors, Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly, became more supportive. They have bosses. Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity work for Roger Ailes, who works for Rupert Murdoch. And if Murdoch and Ailes decide that they're going to go in a certain political direction, bet your bottom dollar that's the direction the Fox hosts, anchors, and news reporters are going to go. Okay, now in this case, it's their hosts, Hannity and O'Reilly, among others. And then they explain, at the time, the Washington Post reported that Mr. Rubio's advisors were monitoring to the minute how much time the host devoted to immigration, and that they, quote, are heartened that the volume is much diminished. So you go and talk to their bosses. They bring Hannity and O'Reilly, those supposed tough guys, they bring them to heel, and they go, okay, no, we won't talk about it. Okay, but there's one other guy they needed to talk to. The media executives, highly attuned to the intensifying anger in the Republican grassroots, warned that the senators also needed to make their case to Rush Limbaugh, the king of conservative talk radio, who's held enormous sway with the party's largely anti-immigrant base. Now, wait a minute. I know Rush is a real conservative, and he doesn't like those politicians in D.C. That's what he says every day on the air. Now, he's not going to take a meeting with Rubio and Schumer, that hated Democrat, is he? Well, let's find out. Mr. Rubio publicly and privately worked to assuage the fears of Mr. Limbaugh, who on air called him a, quote, thoroughbred conservative, and assured one wary listener that, quote, Marco Rubio is not out to hurt this country or change it the way the liberals are. He later acknowledged, I don't know if it was on accident or not, again on the air, that he did talk to Chuck Schumer. He said, Chuck Schumer came and spoke to me, okay? Then Mr. Limbaugh had Mr. Rubio on as a guest to talk about immigration and called him admirable and noteworthy during a warm conversation about the bipartisan immigration plan. All those tough guy conservatives, oh, we're independent, we're against Washington. A couple of senators come by, oh, yes, what can I do? Oh, I will diminish what I say on air. Oh, trust me, you are noteworthy and admirable, Marco Rubio, here to report for duty. Interesting. Okay, now, the conservatives are not the only ones who took those marching orders. The senators, the New York Times explains, embarked on a tour of editorial boards and newsrooms And Mr. Rubio was even featured as the, quote, Republican savior on the cover of Time magazine for his efforts to change immigration laws. And they said, quote, he already, this is the New York Times, was being mentioned as a 2016 presidential contender. See, this is how you get to be a presidential contender. You see, this is what I've been telling you all along. The media and the politicians in Washington, they're in cahoots. You think that the media is holding the senators accountable? No, the senators go over there and tell them, okay, now, I do declare we'll be doing this bill and you'll be on my side. And you will call me a Republican savior. And Time magazine is like, yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Rush bows his head. Hannity, O'Reilly, they bow their head. And Time magazine. Of course, what narrative can we push for the people who are in power? Watchdogs. More like lapdogs. There's another word for that, but I'll leave that be. Now, when this news report leaks, guys at Fox News are a little hurt over it. Remember, all that stuff is supposed to be secret. They hate it when things leak. You think this is the first time Fox News has done this, by the way? There was a story during the 2012 campaign that Roger Ailes had gone and talked to David Petraeus, a general, and tried to convince him to run for president. And he said, if you run for president, I will put all of Fox News behind you. Fair and balanced. That's a good one. No, editorial and management are never mixed. Management doesn't tell people what to do on air. You really believe that? Can anyone possibly believe that? Look at what the reality is. Okay, but once it leaks, they're super pissed, and Hannity's hurt because now it's exposed what a water boy he is. And if you remember, Rush Limbaugh, after the 2012 elections, that's a clip we played for you here on the Young Turks, said, I'm tired of carrying the Republican Party's water. That's an interesting admission. We don't carry anybody's water. But Rush apparently takes his orders and then carries water because that's what they tell him to do. He's a good boy, right? Well, now when that's exposed, Ailes is super pissed. And he says, quote, we're finished with Rubio. We can't do the Rubio thing anymore. Hey, schmuck, you just admitted it. Apparently you were doing the Rubio thing and you can't do it anymore. Thank you. Now you know what Fox News and the rest of the media and Washington, what they are and how they work. This is who they are.